Got a hearty hankering for Gwent.
Welcome to Good Gwent, everyone. I'm your host, Sin, and today I will be making a video about introducing Gwent to players who have never played the game. Specifically, I'm making this video for those of you who might be familiar with the Witcher card game and may be aware of Gwent but have never played it. I'm also making it for people who've heard of Gwent but aren't familiar with the Witcher card game. And those of you who maybe know a little bit about Gwent but are on the fence about playing it. I really enjoy this card game, and I would like to help the player base grow. And so I've decided to start working on helping people get into the game, because this, honestly, I've played a lot of card games. Magic, Star Wars, Hearthstone, trying to think of some others, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon. I've played a lot of card games, and honestly, Gwent plays so differently. It was actually it was a little bit different getting into it, a little bit more. The learning curve was steeper because my prior knowledge didn't help as much. So that's why I wanted to really help accelerate people getting into the game, because I know that if you learn to play the game quicker, it's going to be less frustrating for you, and you'll be less likely to up and leave the game. Which I would really like to support the community and make sure that we grow and have a lot of fun playing this game together, instead of seeing someone quit in frustration. Even if sometimes you may see me play my games and be very frustrated. So, anyways, I'm in practice mode right now because there's no time limit. I can gab for as long as I want without a timer. So, first of all, your objective in Gwent is to win 2 out of 3 rounds of the game. That's who wins the game. The rounds are not like turns. Basically, you win or lose a round based on your strength. The player with the highest strength on the board when both players have passed wins the round. Then you move on to the next round, and the person who won the previous round goes first. If you both passed and it was a tie, I think either the person who goes first goes again first, or it randomly selects one of them again. I'm not sure. I think it's the latter, or the former option, where whoever actually went first last time goes first again. So if you go first, passing immediately is not to your best interest, because if they pass, then they get to go second again, and you get to go first again, and going first is actually, unlike other card games, not an advantage in Gwent, usually. I'm sure there's some deck out there that I'm unaware of where it probably is, but yeah, this is it's just not this one. So I'd like to point out there's 3 rows. This is where your cards get played on your side and the enemy side. You have loyal units, which are basically means that they're your faction, and they're not agents, which means they can't go to the other side of the board. Agents can be played to the other side of the board. They may or may not be your faction, so they can be neutral agents, although I don't think there's any neutral agents in the game. I'm trying to think about that. I'm not recalling any, but I could be wrong. There could be some obscure agent that is neutral. And then double agents can be played to either side. You'll see there's a siege row, range row, melee row. Most cards in the game are now agile. There was a time when they weren't. When they were locked to rows, CDPR, I believe, I don't actually recall the developer comments on that, but I'm pretty sure they made most cards agile to open up more counterplay, so that you can't just, you can't open with like a weather effect on this row because you know that Skellig is going to have like every card they have on the melee row, etc. So they made most units agile. There's still some that go to a specific row, but those are not quite as common. Also, I think there's some method to that madness. Like, I have a suspicion most cards with more powerful passive effects tend to go on the siege row or the ranged row. I could be wrong though. I know most mages will go to the siege row. It probably has a lot to do with their playtesting. They probably test new ideas and they're like, okay, well, this card's too strong as agile, or this card is, yeah, it's too strong as agile. We need to weaken it by putting it here in this row for this faction. They might even change factions based on that. I don't know, but yeah, there's 3 rows. The agile symbol you'll see here on this harpy is the circle of arrows. Siege row, it's a catapult. Range row, it's a crossbow, and the melee row, it's a sword. Fairly simple. These numbers here are the strength on that row. And this number here is your total board strength. It's all in positives. I actually have an add-on that tells me my strength relative to theirs, which it can show a negative number, but that's not normally part of the game's default interface. Neither is this thing. You see me here using the Necker. This shows me what's in my deck. It'll show me what's on the board, and it'll show me what's in the graveyard. It's useful. I mean, you guys might be like, oh no, that's cheating. I've heard that, but most major card games will let you take notes, even in money events like tournaments. You can take notes. The world champions can take notes in the world championship match, and that's really all this third-party program does. It just takes notes for you. It's like auto notes. So it doesn't do anything you couldn't do with a pen and paper. It just does it faster with less writing. So I think it's fine. But, you're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine. So there's a number that's not on the board yet. So I better advance the game to do that. To show you that number. So let's go over mulligans. Mulligans... Actually, I probably shouldn't start there, should I? So you'll notice he has 10 cards. I have 10 cards. You can't see them here, but here they are, 10 cards, plus a leader card. Your leader card is a lot like Vanguard in Magic the Gathering. It represents a card that you always have access to at the beginning of the game. Essentially, it's a card in your hand that you always have access to. It has a very powerful, unique effect. Leaders can't be copied. They can't be repeated. Except for Nilfgaard has a gold card which repeats which triggers your leader card's ability regardless of where it is. But that's besides the point. Generally speaking, their effects can't be duplicated and they're very unique. So that's what a leader card is. They form the basis of decks. That's one thing I love about the game, is the leaders actually are a huge deal in forming the basis of decks. Because certain leaders will, support certain strategies better than others. You could get away with playing other leaders in those decks, but I'm sure there's been times when that's been really techy for people and it's won them games. But generally speaking, that's not going to happen just because the leader's so strong and so synergistic in their deck. So you draw 10 cards at the beginning of the game. This is important to note that you draw 10 cards in round 1 because you get a limited number of draws in Gwent. You don't draw a card every turn like you do in other card games like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone. You get a limited number of draws. You get 10 in round 1, you get 2 in round 2, and 1 in round 3. So 13 cards are drawn naturally. There's other methods of drawing cards, but one thing you're going to have to pay attention to is in Gwent, card advantage is a huge deal. If you're up like 3 or 4 cards, you probably won't get beaten. You probably can't lose that match. So the creators are very careful about giving us cards that give card advantage. Most card drawing in this game is going to play the effect right away, so you can't be a card over your opponent. The cards that do put cards in hand will generally force you to put a resource on the board at the same time. There's only a few cards, like the spy agents. There's a rotation of those. Every faction has their own that you play to the opponent's side of the board. It gives them a hefty chunk of strength, but in exchange you get to draw a card in its place. It cycles itself in your hand, which in this game is basically the way you get ahead on cards, because you can't choose to pass around without playing a card unless you're done for the rest of that round. If you pass in Gwent, if you decline to play a card, you cannot play cards the rest of that round. So agent cards are essentially like, they're basically a stall. They cycle themselves in your hand. They allow you to keep from going down a card while your opponent has the option to go down a card or not go down a card in the next round. You're placing that decision on them. And it usually results in CA for you. Not always, and it won't result for CA if they've already passed. But that's besides the point. We're getting off track. So in addition to that, you get mulligans. You get 3 mulligans in round 1, 1 in round 2, and 1 in round 3. These are hugely important. First of all, in Gwent, the deck is not shuffled. It's randomized at the start of the game. The order of the cards is randomized. And then after that, any card that goes back in your deck goes back in a random position. But the deck itself is not shuffled. So if you have 3 Harpies at the top of your deck, and you shuffle a Slizzard back into your... Shuffle. Let's go. Shuffle a Slizzard into your deck, and it could be placed between the 2 Harpies, but either way, there's going to be 3 Harpies in the top 5 slots of your deck. So that's something to remember. There's actually an effect that there's one card that I can think of that that does re-randomize your deck in the game. It's Steven Skellig, or Steven. What's his name? Yeah, Steven Skellen. There we go. Skellen, not Skellig. Steven Skellen actually does re-randomize the deck, but it's the only card I can think of. They might introduce more in the future. And also that effect is kind of like way, how do you say it? It's very narrowly applied. There's some strategies that use it, like in Nilfgaard, because you can get down to a few cards and then re-randomize the order, thus giving you a chance to pull what you're looking for. But generally speaking, Steven Skellen isn't really thought about much in terms of, can I re-randomize the deck? Your mulligans blacklist cards. What that means is if I shuffle away this Harpy, mulligan it back, I cannot draw another Harpy in its place unless it's the only card I could possibly draw. You have to remember that is hugely important. So if you have 3 of something you don't want in your hand at any given moment, like Harpies, which most players definitely don't want them in their hand, you can mulligan it and you won't see it again unless it's the only card you can draw. Alright, my 3 mulligans are done with. You'll see this is blue for go first. I'm blue, I go first. Red means that you go second. Blue means it's your turn if you went first, and red means it's your opponent's turn. Or blue just means it's your turn. Your opponent will see blue also if it's their turn. These are the number of games you won, rounds you won. You get half a crown for each win. 2 crowns means that that person has won 2 rounds. That's different from the original Gwent, where it was you had 2 lives and you lost 1 each time you lost a round. I don't know why they changed it around. I don't know if there's any functional difference, but that's how that works. This number you'll see here that wasn't here before, that's the number of cards you actually have on the table. This number is the one I was talking about that shows you your actual strength relative to your opponents. That's put in by the third-party add-on. Number of cards in your deck, number of cards in the graveyard, number of cards in your hand, and your deck, graveyard. You click on these to access. Well, there's nothing in my graveyard right now. Your opponent's name. I think it shows what title they have displayed in their portrait. If you click on this, you can use taunts.
Watch closely. You might just learn something.
See? Even Siri thinks you should be watching me. So here we go. We're going to start playing game. You play 1 card per turn, and it goes back to your opponent, or your opponent then gets to take a turn. You go back and forth until both players have passed, and the round ends. On passing, it's important to note that if you pass, the round does not end. Your opponent has to pass, and the turn will come back to you. You'll pass again, and it'll go back to your opponent. I've seen people lose early on ladder because they didn't know that, and they would pass, and then they lose because the opponent doesn't pass. So, like, I'm specifically, and they don't even go down a card. I'm specifically thinking about whether, like, they might pass, goes back to the opponent makes a play, they're still down, passes back to them, then back to them, and, you know, they lose, and then the opponent passes, or they lose strength that's enough to get them positive, and they lose that round because of that. So be cognizant of that. When you select a card, you play it, it goes to a row, and you pick a card, and you pick where it goes. Normally you wouldn't actually play you don't want to do what I just did with the operator. There's nothing here you really want to. Well, maybe Ekimara, but no, not Ekimara. You don't really want to give your opponent. Actually, what would have been good was a Necker Warrior, but I wouldn't have kept operator if I was actually playing very seriously. So, well, let's go through this, and I'll try to keep explaining about what's going on. So, use Royal Decree to fetch a Woodland Spirit. Siege Row. Woodland Spirit summons 3 wolves, places a fog hazard. Hazards are a weather effect, basically. It's a continuous effect that applies to the whole row. So far, they only do damage, but I suspect they might try to do other things with them eventually. Also, they usually do 2 damage. Some don't, like Skellig Storm does 2, 1, 1, as in 2 to the left, then 1, then 1. But generally right now, weather does 2. There's a positive hazard in the game, or a positive weather effect called a boon, or a positive static effect called boon that works just like the old weather cards did, and it does +1 to 3 different units each round, and it can spread it around. So to different rows, but that's the only really different one so far. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play my Unseen Elder because I want it to thin my deck out by pulling the Harpies.
The gate must be secure.
That's gonna give me 3 strength. Basically, I'm not losing the strength of the wolves, just going to the Elder, but I get to summon 4 strength worth of Harpies, and it thins my deck down. Royal Decree into Woodland Spirit, which pulls a Foglet and allows you to consume into 3 Harpies, is really good for deck thinning. See, the opponent passed because I'm way ahead on tempo. I'm 29 versus 12, so I'm ahead by 17. The opponent passed because of that. The computer is very big on passing with, I think, a 15, maybe 16-point lead. I'm not 100% sure. Also, I think the weather goes into the calculation for whether it'll pass. Honestly, if I was paying attention or had a chance, I would have wanted to put Harpies in my deck using Necker Warrior because Harpies put in the deck with Necker Warrior on the bottom. It's like they're not even there. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to dry pass because there's no point in playing this round. You have a limited number of cards, remember? So if I pass here, they have to play a card because they need to win, and then I'll enter round 3 being up 1 card relative to where I was. And they'll go first and have to play another card, and I'm guaranteed to get the last play unless they play like an agent or something. Alright. I actually did not get any of the Neckers this deck needs to win, so we'll see how this goes. If you're wondering why I'm playing certain things, this isn't really a very serious version of Consume. This is like my 1,000,001 Necker Consume deck I play for fun. So you guys know.
If I must.
What he does is he looks at 3 random bronze units from the opponent's deck, and you choose one to consume and boost it by base power. It can be good in some matchups. Specifically, I'm thinking of Scoia'tael. Right now, it's not so good though because Bran is really popular, and anything you might want to get out of the deck is just going to go in their graveyard, and it's not really lost to them. So. Archgriffin moves a bronze card from the graveyard to from either graveyard to the opposite graveyard.
Resistance is futile.
Huh? Oh, I thought I had 2 Archgriffins in here. Oh, the other one's in my hand, so neat. It's a good thing I'm not playing on ranked ladder right now. I just want to get the Ekimara into my graveyard there, because the Ekimara, I can summon another one with Slizzard that way if I warrior the Ekimara. It's good to remember, like, Necro Warrior and Slizzard have such great synergy together because you can basically toolbox with Necro Warrior. Yeah, I feel like I'm not going to win this. I really do. Issue is just that I did not get my Neckers out, and this deck needs Neckers, but you know. Neckarot consumes a silver bronze unit from either graveyard. Really strong in the meta right now, because just graveyard hate in the meta right now in general is really strong, because the two most popular and 2 most powerful decks both rely on their graveyard. One relies on its own, the other one relies on the opponent's. So that's just a starting tip for you guys. That would be Amir, relies on your graveyard to get its spies back out of your graveyard, so get them out of there. And Bran relies on putting things in its graveyard, so get them out of Bran's graveyard. Really not sure what else I can do. By the way, if you were playing this mirror normally, you wouldn't want to put anything good in your own graveyard from theirs because they can Gravedigger it. Oh, that's another thing. Archgriffin is really good comboed with, or not Gravedigger, Caretaker, excuse me. Caretaker is good comboed with Archgriffin because Archgriffin can put something from your graveyard in the opponent's and then you can Caretaker it. But I rarely do that, honestly. It's not #1 thing on my mind most of the time. Uh-oh. That's bad mojo. See, I don't have anything that the Necker consume is actually synergistic with, so there's really... It's just like I'm adding 6 strength to the board. And no, that's not going to be enough. Okay, well, I lost to the computer. How embarrassing, guys. Make sure that that doesn't be you, but... anyways, that's how the game is played, and I hope that you saw some potential in the game and that you'll decide to try it out, and that I'll see you in Gwent. So, next video, guys. I think I'm going to be discussing basic card game concepts, how they apply to Gwent. And I'm going to move on to things like deck building and then some basic play tips that I didn't go over while we were playing this game. Until next time, guys.